Welcome GRD 132, Typography 1. We're going to work on some typography in Microsoft Word, whether you do it in the Mac version or the Windows version or Office 365. And let me just give you a heads up, I worked in the Office 365 version. I was actually recording a video using that and it was very frustrating. A lot of odd, bizarre things going on there. So if you can avoid Microsoft 365, that's the web-based version, kind of like the Google Docs version. If you can avoid that, I would recommend avoiding it because I was going crazy. I had to restart it 3 times. Bizarre things go on there. It doesn't show the page the right size. Just all kinds of things were driving me crazy. So I was just like, I'm just going to do this in the Mac version. And if you need me to record something else, I will. I do have older recordings of Google Docs versions and even Windows versions, but I'm going to do a new one in the Mac version for anybody who has that. But everything, I'll try to point out things that are like the Windows version. So let me just show you some things here for this so we can work on some typography and formatting and all that stuff that carries over to any program that you work on. And I'm going to go down to Unit 7. That's where it is right now. And it's called ex10 Formatting Practice Word. And there is a Word doc that you can download, or you could just open right in Word and resave it. And I might do that. So I might resave it doing that and open it up in my Mac version. So if you click on it, it should open in Word if you have Word installed. If not, you can download it, upload it to Office 365 to OneDrive and work on it there. You can even try Google Docs. If you don't have anything else, you could try it in Google Docs, but I'd rather you do it in Word, some version of Word if you can. So I'm going to do it in the Mac version, and I'll point out things that are different with the Windows version if possible. And if not, I'll record a new video with the Windows version just for you guys if you need. But hopefully this will be enough. So I'm going to click on this and open it. And actually, before I do that, let me go over to Documents and Resources. And you'll see there's a sample. And it's really nothing special. It's just a paragraph that's centered, a paragraph that has a hanging indent like you would see in a bibliography or works cited section. There's a paragraph that has indents on the left and right. Office 365 calls them before and after, which makes no sense. They call this before and after. It should be left and right. And this is 1.5 line spacing. And then there's 3 bullet list paragraphs. And then there's a paragraph that has bold italic headings over top of 3 other paragraphs. And they use tabs here. And these are tab leaders. These dots are called leaders because they lead your eye across. And you'll see that for table of contents and things like that. So we're going to go over all that. I'm going to do it in Word for Mac because that's just going to be familiar for me. And if I have to do other ones, I will. But at least I won't be going crazy here like I was in the 365 version. Also, there's instructions here. So you can click on that and follow the instructions. So sample, instructions, and I'm going to go back here. And if you need to open it up from here, I have a file here. So I'm going to open it up. And it opens up right here, and I'm going to save it to my computer. So I'll do save as. And it's in downloads right now. You can keep it in downloads or save it somewhere on your computer. And I'm going to go to my 132 folder into notes, and I'll give it a last name of mine, Homa R. And I have another version. Make sure you don't get rid of the doc. I have another version here that I was working on. I'll just save over it because that's the one I uploaded to Microsoft 365. So now it's saved. And a couple things I want to point out here, and you can see this on the instructions. So I'll go back to the instructions, which are here. Use the Show Hide button, change your page margins, and change all the text to Times New Roman. Well, let's go back here. Let's go back to Word. And again, this is our ribbon up here. And if you're in 365, you can put on the classic ribbon. And first of all, this is the Show Hide button. So if that's on, which it is now, you could see those are tabs. You could see those are spaces. These are returns. And these are tabs down here, these arrows. So there's already tabs in there. So we're just going to redirect the tabs. So we don't have to insert any tabs. And this is a mistake here. So make sure you go in here and hit return here so that you have a paragraph return. That's something I didn't fix yet and I should have fixed. And that's it. So we're going to change our page margins. Now, if you go to Layout, and that's the same way on Windows, you should be able to go to Layout and go to Margins and just make it normal, 1 inch all around. That should fix that. Then go back to your Home tab and highlight everything. Now, how do you highlight everything? Put your cursor in here and do either Control A on Windows or Command A on Mac. And change this to Times New Roman. Everybody should have Times New Roman. Don't worry about bold or anything like that yet. And let me go back to my instructions. I'll zoom in a little. Show height button, page margins to 1, everything's Times New Roman. That's up to 3. Now number 4 is this first paragraph. We're going to do a first line indent. We're going to do 12-point space after, and that's it. So let's go back to Word. So just this paragraph. Now for paragraph formatting, you only have to have your cursor in here. But first, let me get rid of this. Backspace, get rid of those tabs. And you only have to have your cursor in here for paragraph formatting. And paragraph formatting is all the stuff in here. And in Windows, you should have a little button that'll open up your paragraph settings. On the Mac, they don't. You just have to go here and go to line spacing options. Same place. You'll have a place that looks like this. And that's what we're going to do for this paragraph. So make sure your cursor's in here, and we're going to do a first line indent. Now, how do you do that? Wherever you find special under indentation. Now, on 365, it's on the left side. But we're going to go to special, and I'm going to go to first line, and it should use 0.5 by default, and you should be able to just hit OK. But before you do that, I'm also going to do a space after, and I'm going to click here up to 6 point and then up to 12 point. Now, on 365, it goes in 1 point increments, so you got to keep clicking them. And that's all you should have to do here, is just do the space after and the first line indent. And I just want to indicate that this thing is the first line indent. That little arrow, the top one, so you can move this around, but that's what we did. And this is the hanging indent. See, it's getting the other text. And if you do the bottom thing, that gets all of it. That's the left indent. So first line, hanging, left. And we'll show you about some of that as we work. This is just basic formatting that you should know for every program that you work in. Now, not every program has all of these features. They have some of them, and sometimes they're a little bit different. In Figma, they just do space between paragraph. They don't do space before and after. So what we're going to do here for our next paragraph is go to this works cited and center it. It's a paragraph, so we have to line it centered. And then we can highlight the entire paragraph and put it in double spacing. Now, just so you know where we're working here, this is the works cited paragraph. This is number 5. So it should be double spaced, and the works cited part should be centered. I don't think I mentioned, okay, works cited should be center line. That's in here. And then we're going to put a hanging indent on that next paragraph, not the heading. So that works cited top part should be center line. But they should all be double spaced. So what I mean here is these should all be double spaced. So how do you do that? You go to spacing, just do 2.0. There it is. And I think they tell you to put space after. They do not. You don't have to put space after because there's a natural space because of the double spacing. So we're not putting any space after. There's natural space, although here it looks like we do have it. But we could always put it in if we want. But we'll leave this here. Now what we have to do here is do what's called a hanging indent. Now how do you do that? Well, you could do this. You could move this over to a 1/2 inch, which is here, and then move the top back. Now, not a lot of people know how to do it that way, so I'm going to undo that. And the easy way, I'll undo again, the easy way is just to go into our line spacing options again and just go to special. Now, first of all, make sure you don't include the works cited. This is just the second paragraph. This is just this part. You can just click in here. That's all you have to do. Don't include works cited. That should be center aligned, and it should stay like that. So in this one, we're going to go to line spacing options, and we're going to do special, and instead of first line, we're going to use hanging, and it'll also use 0.5 by default, and I'll just hit OK. And that's it. That's all you have to do there. We won't bother with space after for now, although you could put 12-point space after if you wanted to. If you wanted to, you could go in here, line spacing options, and just do space after 12 point. And I'll put it in, I guess, because it looks like it is on the other one. Okay, so now we're on to this paragraph, and what's going to happen with this paragraph? That's this red one here. This is the red, apply a left and right indent. Now they say before and after on 365, which makes no sense. And it's going to be 0.75, and the line spacing is going to be 1.5, and we'll also put a 12-point space after setting. So that means go back to Word, go in this paragraph. We don't have to highlight anything. Just go in here and go to your line spacing options. And we're going to use indent, left and right. That's what it should be. Indent should be left and right. Spacing should be before and after. 365 uses before and after for indents, which makes no sense. So I'm going to go in here and I'll do 0.7. Now it doesn't do 2 characters, and I don't know why, because you would do a 1/4 inch and 3/4 of an inch, but I'll just put in 0.75. I'll type it in manually, and then I'll highlight here and put it in manually. So that means it's on both sides. And I'll also put 12 point space after. So that's spacing, that puts space after. That's so it separates the paragraph, it's easier to read. And also, we didn't do the line spacing. So we could just keep our cursor in there and do the line spacing, 1.5. That's it. So it's got a left indent, a right indent, it's got spacing at 1.5, and it's got spacing after at 12 point. This one has a hanging indent of 0.5, space after a 12 point, although that wasn't in the instructions. And it's 2.0, 2 paragraphs here. This paragraph and this paragraph are 2.0 line spacing or double spacing. And this one's centered, so it's not part of what's going on here. And this one has a first line indent, and it has space after. And now we're on to our bullet list. We're going to highlight 3 of them because there's 3 paragraphs. We have to highlight them all, so I'll just highlight them all. And I'll put them in bullet formatting. That's also called an unordered list, meaning there's not a number here. So it's called an unordered list. That would be an ordered list. This is unordered in HTML, but this is just a bullet list. Now, it doesn't have space in between. We'll do that. We'll do space after each paragraph. And one thing it does by default is it moves everything over a 1/4 inch by default, just by putting it in there. And I think it does that in Windows version too. And it did it in the 365 version. If you don't want that, I think you can hit here, which is decrease indent, and move it back. And if you didn't want to do that, let's say it was up there, you could go into your line spacing options again, and you could just turn off the left indent, because the hanging indent is 0.25, and I just want to point out, the hanging indent is this distance right here. That's the hanging indent. The left indent is over here, is this part here is the hanging indent. This part over here is the left indent. So if you don't want it moved over, which we don't, then just put this back to 0 and hit OK. And then we also have to go back here again, go to line spacing options, and we're going to put space after each paragraph, and I'll put 12. And one thing I also want to point out is if you ever needed to break a line, meaning you wanted it on the next line, if you hit return, it's going to create another bullet, which you don't want. So make sure that you go here and you do a shift return or shift enter. That'll put a line break. That's a line break. This is a tab. So it puts a little arrow going the other way. And you don't want to do that all the time, but there's sometimes a need for line breaks to break paragraphs without starting a new paragraph. Certainly in bullet lists, you'd have to do that. You could also, one thing to point out is you could bring in the right indent. You know, that's another way. Now, I just have one paragraph selected, but if I selected all 3, I could bring in the right indent, and that would make them break. You know, now they're going to break naturally. So that's another way to do it, you know, instead of always putting in line breaks. But just keep in mind that a line break will not change to a new paragraph. So even if you'd want to just move it over a little, just that little bit of right indent moves it over, if you had a problem with that. So just pointing that out, that's the right indent. Now down here, let's go back to our instructions. We did the blue paragraphs. Oh, one thing I just want to point out, in case you had a problem, in case you're like, wait, that didn't work. If these spaces didn't show up here, and this happens on the Windows version, if these spaces didn't show up, I just want to point something out, make sure that this isn't checked. Don't add space between paragraphs. Make sure that's unchecked, because in the Windows version, sometimes that's checked by default, and you do not want this checked. So you don't want that checked. So if your spacing isn't showing up, make sure that's not checked. Sorry, I should have did that first. Okay, now we can move on to this paragraph. What we'll do is look at the instructions. We have basically 4 paragraphs. We have the heading one, which is this one. It's 14 point bold italic, 18 space before, 6 after, and then we're going to set 2 tabs at 5 1/4 inch and 6 inches. And now this is a little different on the Windows version, so you could check the older video for that if you need to. And just this paragraph, you could go over here and just click here, just this paragraph. I'm going to make it, I don't know why it's still 10.5. Did I make everything? Did I not make everything 12? What happened to Command A and making everything 12? I thought I did that already. Did I forget to do that at the beginning of the video? Everything should be 12. Better late than never. I should have done that. That was like step 2 on our list that I didn't do it. Anyway, you could do it later, not a big deal. So what I'm going to do here is make this one 14. And I'm going to make it bold italic. And there are already tabs in there. So I'm just going to realign where those tabs are supposed to be. Now, how do you do that? Go into your paragraph settings, line spacing options, and go down to tabs. And there's different ways to add these, but you want to leave this alone. Wherever you have default, leave it alone. Don't mess with this at all. Stay away from default stops. You want to add a tab stop. Now, I think on the 365 it tells you to add it, but you want to put it in here. So I want to put one here at 5.25 and make it a right align tab, and then hit plus. And then add a second one at 6 inches. Make sure it's also right aligned, and hit plus or add. And then hit OK. And these should line up, and they're the tab stops. See, it's right aligned, so the right side of the text is aligning to that. That's a right aligned tab stop, and this is a right aligned tab stop. And sometimes you'll have leaders here, like we will, except we're not going to put leaders for the headings. We'll put leaders for the prices, so your eyes can follow the prices. Now, going back to the instructions, that's the first paragraph. So we still didn't do everything. We did do the tabs, but let's do the 6 point after and the 18 before. So back to line spacing options, before, 18, after, 6. Okay, that's it. That's perfect. Now these 3 paragraphs we're going to highlight. How do I know they're paragraphs? They have return symbols. So there are 3 separate paragraphs. We have to highlight them all or just go through them. But they're all selected now. I don't have to go through all of it. That's only if you're changing the font or something like that. So if you're highlighting a font, just like before, I forgot to make everything 12, highlight everything. Now, by the way, I highlighted everything and it's not showing 12. You know why? Because this is 14. So there's a mix going on there. So if I just highlighted this, everything should be 12. So I'm going to highlight these 3 paragraphs, and I'll go back to my instructions and see what I'm supposed to do. And it says right aligned at the same tab stops, 5 1/4, 6, except the first one at 5 1/4 will have a dot leader. And then we're going to add 6 point space after to all 3 paragraphs, and we're going to change the color to green. Well, let's do that. Okay, that's most of it's going to be under line spacing. So we're going to go to line spacing options, and we could actually do the 6 point after right here because we're going to be doing that. And there's no indents or anything like that. But what I'll do is go into tabs, and again, 5.25, and make it a right tab, and give it a dot leader, and then hit plus. And now that's added in there. Now I'll add a second one at 6 inches, and I'll make it a right tab. It's staying at right. There's no leader. I don't want a leader for the 6-inch one, and I'll hit plus or add. Remember, stay away from this stuff. And I'll hit OK. Now they're all lined up. That looks good. I'll make it green. Now I'll make this just a kind of a dark green here. And then I'll highlight this one and do the same dark green so they're the same. Because sometimes on the Windows version, they don't have an eyedropper. And I'll just do it like that. So that's all you could do here. If you wanted it in a little bit more, you could highlight all these paragraphs. And if you wanted to, you could indent it maybe 0.25 or something. Go to here. Or just highlight and put 0.25 in there and move everything over a little bit. You don't have to do that, but that way it lines up under the bullets there for whatever reason. Again, this is just a practice exercise, so I didn't mean to confuse you by not doing the point size. Let me zoom out here and see what it looks like. That's what it should look like in the end. And I'll save it. So I'll do Command S on a Mac, Control S on Windows to save it. If you're on Office 365, you can share it with me with the share button. And what I'll do now that it's finished, is I'll go to my Warren, and where you could turn this in is coursework. And I'll show you what to do here, because we usually turn in a link or something like that. I'll show you how to turn in a file. We'll go to Formatting Practice Word, and we'll do it through a comment. We could still do it through a comment, but instead of using a link or an image, we're going to use a file. So you'll go here and upload a file, hit upload, and find the one I just did. There's the one I just did. And I'll hit open, and I'll hit insert. And then what you could do is click on here and go into the link and just make sure it opens in a new window. That helps. And even though it won't, it'll open in Word, so I don't know if that really matters. But that's how you insert your file. So I don't do an upload file thing because that thing's a pain. So I'll just do it through comments. So you just make sure you use this icon here when you do it, and that's all you have to do. And if you are using Office 365 or if you end up using Google Docs, I have a video for that. You can insert a link, and you can use a shared link for that. So I'll hit save, and that's it. So I want to work with Word for a little bit just to get used to their formatting and the terminology and just basic tools and formatting that carries over to every program that you use. And Word has really nice typographic capabilities. Not everybody knows how to use them. Some people are just so used to just using them just for what they need and just get it to look all right. But a lot of people don't know how to use tabs properly and know how to use line breaks and space after and space before, all that kind of stuff. So I want to make sure you know how to use it in Word, because people use Word all the time and don't even know what they're doing. So that's why I'm doing this exercise in Word. And again, if I get a chance, I'll try to do one in 365. I did one before, and I just had all kinds of problems. Really threw me for a loop. You wouldn't think. I mean, I've used Google Docs, I've used Mac and Windows version, but 365 is just really poor. That's the only way I could describe it. It's just poor. It's just better just for editing documents if you have to. But creating new documents and working in there, it's just really rough. You know, Google probably does a better job of it than Microsoft does. So anyway, that's ex10, and that's just formatting practice, getting used to all this kind of stuff in here. Indents, first line indents, hanging indents, line spacing, alignment, centered. Everything is left except for this one is centered. Bullet list, tabs, leaders, left and right indents, the hanging distance, quarter inch, space after, all that kind of stuff we did in here. That's all pretty much paragraph formatting. We didn't do much with character stuff here, but it's all good paragraph formatting that you should know how to do. And maybe you do, maybe you don't. Chances are you don't know how to do it as much because people don't really teach you how to do that. People just kind of jump into Word and just start working and let Word kind of figure things out for you. So anyway, that's ex10. We'll do a little bit more with Word. So contact me if you're having any problems with Word or you don't have access to Word, anything like that, and I'll try to help you out.